When children are born, the doctor usually says, "It's a girl," or "It's a boy." This is our most common understanding of gender, a gender binary. Gender, though, is more along the lines of a spectrum, and some people even think of it as a circle. And sometimes when the doctor says, "It's a girl," or "It's a boy," he isn't quite right. Though it's hard to estimate, some surveys say that as many as 2 or 3 in every 100 people internationally may identify as something other than male or female. Most people are cisgender, which means their biological sex, male or female, matches up with their gender, boy or girl, man or woman. People who don't fit into the label cisgender are found somewhere in the transgender umbrella. Sometimes their gender and their sex don't match, and other times their gender is something outside of masculine or feminine terms like bigender, genderqueer, or androgynous. Transsexual people are another example of transgender people. Transsexual people are those who are born one sex and yet feel they are the other. A trans man is a female-bodied person who identifies as male, and a trans woman is a male-bodied person who identifies as female. Transsexual people usually transition, meaning they have what most people think of as a sex change. That means they could have surgery or take hormones to make their body more like they feel it should be. The Diagnostic Statistical Manual says that transsexual people have gender identity disorder, but most people who are transsexual or work with transsexual people agree that being transgender or transsexual is not a mental illness. For the most part, our world isn't built for transgender people. There are only 2 choices on legal forms and public restroom signs. Even our language demands that transgender people be one or the other, because there is no widely accepted pronoun for people who don't identify as male or female. And while our world doesn't usually make space for them, transgender people have existed, at least since the beginning of recorded history, from the pharaoh of ancient Egypt, Hatshepsut, the two-spirited people of many tribes native to the Americas. Records of transgender people can be found all over the world. Some people believe that Joan of Arc may have been transgender, and historically, transgender people have been victim to brutal violence since the rise of colonialism. There are records that early conquistadors brutally tortured and killed many two-spirited people who belonged to various South American tribes. Even today, the murder rate for transgender people is at least 16 times the national average. Indeed, the community has set aside a day, Transgender Day of Remembrance, November 20th of every year, to commemorate the brothers, sisters, and siblings lost.
Everything's so loud when you are coming down. Get lost in the crowd when you're not thinking. When the silence disappears.
This is not the only form of violence faced by transgender people. 78% of transgender people report being verbally harassed because of their sexual orientation or gender identity, and 48% report being physically or sexually assaulted. Because of this kind of harassment, almost a third of transgender youth attempt suicide, which is 3 times the rate of cisgender youth. And 20 to 40% of homeless youth identify as gay or transgender. 26% of youth who tell their parents they are gay or transgender are told to leave home. Transgender people are also at very high risk to be victim of job discrimination. Unemployment for transgender people is about double that which is seen in the wider population, and almost half of transgender people report adverse action on the part of their employees upon learning that they were transgender. A quarter of transgender people have been fired from a job because of their gender identity. Because of issues such as these, the poverty rate for transgender people is nearly double the national rate. And there are only 12 states which protect a transgender person's right to housing. Transgender people also face hardship with insurance companies, which often will not pay for medications or procedures related to their transition, and doctors may not be educated in transgender issues. In 1999, a trans man died when he was repeatedly denied care for cervical cancer by over 20 medical doctors. When he finally found a doctor who would see him, his cancer had progressed too far and he died soon after. Trans people are at higher risk than the general populations for other diseases, such as HIV. Because of the lack of sensitive healthcare practitioners, they often fail to seek preventative care. There is some legislation being pushed that would protect transgender people from the heinous kinds of discrimination they face on a daily basis. In October 2009, the Matthew Shepard Act was signed into law, which added sexual orientation and gender identity as grounds for hate crimes, which means the murders of transgender people can now be prosecuted as hate crimes. ENDA, the Employment Non-Discrimination Act, has been introduced to every Congress since 1994 and has never had success. The act would prohibit employment discrimination on the grounds of sexual orientation and gender identity. There are some municipalities in the United States that afford this protection, but not many. Pittsburgh has a small transgender community, but even so it has many resources. Within the city, transgender people are protected from both employment and housing discrimination. Pittsburgh is also home to many organizations which advocate for transgender people. The Persad Center is the United States' second oldest counseling center that provides service specifically to lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and HIV-positive people. Metro Family Practice in Wilkinsburg is one of the nation's oldest LGBT-friendly healthcare providers. There are also other resources such as TransPit, the Gay and Lesbian Community Center, and the Delta Foundation, which provides services and support locally. Nationally, organizations such as Lambda Legal, Parents and Friends of Lesbian and Gays, otherwise known as PFLAG, Gay, Lesbian, and Straight Education Network, known as GLSEN, and the National Transgender Advocacy Coalition provide advocacy for transgender people. The biggest ways social services can be of aid to transgender and gender variant people is to continue to be sensitive to the issues. Understanding that respecting a person's gender identity, that is to say, whether they feel they are a man, woman, or something else entirely, is the first step to ending the violence and discrimination they face. Just as any other human being, transgender people deserve respect and to be called by the pronouns and name of their choosing. Understanding the issues and educating others is of the utmost importance, because even today there are very few people and even fewer services that really understand how to make service sensitive to the needs of transgender clients. Being aware that not all service providers are friendly and safe for transgender people, and being able to recommend services that are trans-friendly is very important for the health and safety of the client. The transgender community has also historically been a very activist and supportive community. There are many support groups appearing on the internet as well as in larger metropolitan areas. Transgender people are also beginning to gain higher and higher media visibility. In 1999, the film Boys Don't Cry was released. It followed the real-life story of trans man Brendan Teena, who was raped and murdered in Nebraska in 1993 after the police dismissed his allegations of rape against other men in the community. To date, The film stands as one of the most well-known and accurate features of transgender people in the media. Transgender people come from all walks of life and all kinds of backgrounds. All in all, gender variant and transgender people are a diverse and resilient community who deserve respect and understanding, and who need people to understand and help change a world that has made no room for them.